Hey bitches, this is Sierra.
Hey bitches, this is Morgan.
And this is a bitch bite.
Bitches and murders. And if you don't know what a bitch bite is, it's a little aside from our normal episodes, which will probably be, I don't know, I'm assuming around like an hour or so.
Yeah.
Bitch bites are kind of for little, either shorter cases, or maybe if we're just talking about a very specific, smaller topic, like the psychology of something. Yeah. You know, our little asides. They're like, just as fun, I promise.
Like this episode is not super well documented, so I don't have a lot of content to cover.
But you'll want to give it a listen anyway.
So today we're going to talk about the forgotten witch trials.
Not the Salem ones. Forget about those. Those are the new forgotten witch trials. These are the real witch trials.
We're going to make you forget about the Salem witch trials.
That's the goal.
Yeah. And the fun part about this podcast or about this episode is I did all of the research, and Morgan has no idea what I'm about to talk about.
Oh, I'm just ready. I'm closing my laptop right now. You hear that? It closed. I don't know what's happening.
Her reactions are going to be organic, and I'm excited because she's going to hate everything.
Ooh, you can hear me rubbing my hands together.
It's also hilarious that I'm the one that's doing the witch episode, because if you saw us in person, you would totally be like, no, Morgan's the fucking witch.
I'm the witch. Also, if you all are interested, I do tarot readings. Hit me up. I do. They're good. I promise.
Okay, let's get to these witch trials. So, okay.
The lights just flickered. We might die.
It's spooky.
At least you'll get your episode, though.
Right. So these witch trials actually predate Salem, and there's a lot of argument about the range of years here, because there was technically one person that was tried for witchcraft. I think like Alice something or other in 1647. But there was a span between her death and then when the whole hysteria happened.
Right, because that wasn't until, like the 1690s, I thought you said?
1662 is when it started.
Oh, 60s.
So, for the sake of our podcast, I'm going to say that these trials ranged from 1662 to 1697, which is a huge fucking yikes. Like, that's
a long period of time.
That's almost 30 years? That's horrifying.
Because wasn't the Salem witch trials literally like...
It was a year.
It was like, yeah, I was going to say...
It was one singular year.
I read The Crucible.
I read The Crucible. Yeah, Salem was 1 year, and this was a 30-year span of nonsense. Unfortunately, it is not as well documented as the Salem witch trials.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah. So a lot of what I'll be talking about will be kind of what started all of this. Some people that, kind of went a little bit cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
My favorite phrase of all time.
And then I'll talk about how many people were tried and how many were convicted.
Yeah, don't get ahead of yourself, guys. We'll get there.
So there's two kind of prime locations for this, and it was Hartford and Fairfield, Connecticut. Which, the only reason I know about Hartford, Connecticut is because of Gilmore Girls. Shout out to that.
I just know because it's the capital, and I remember memorizing those back in... What was that, like 4th grade?
I don't know.
5th grade? I don't know.
Geography.
They asked a lot of us. There's 50 of them. That was a lot.
You can ask my coworkers. I don't geography, so...
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah, so Hartford and Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm already gonna fail. So, like I said, the witch hunts, I'm going to say, kind of started in March of 1662, and it started with the death of 8-year-old Elizabeth Kelly.
Oh. Really long.
Yeah. So her death was described as sudden and out of nowhere. And a few days prior to her death, she had visited neighbor, I'm going to butcher this name, I'm so sorry, Goodwife Aries? Aries? A-Y-R-E-S?
Aries?
Yeah, Aries? I don't know.
So cool name, though. I'm a fan.
Yeah. So the night that she got back from, a.k.a. Goody, because that's so much easier to say.
Yeah.
The night she got back from Goody's, Elizabeth started complaining of being ill, and then she passed away a couple of days later.
That's really fast for most illnesses back then, even. Like, people died a lot, but not usually that fast, I feel like.
When I get to the autopsy report, it'll kind of make sense of why she died that quickly.
Gotcha.
And also, it was the 1600s. Like, let's be real. There was a lot of sketch diseases going on, and she was 8.
Oh, yeah, she didn't really have much defensive strength.
So, her parents were understandably so, distraught about her death and how quickly it happened. And they decided,
I would hope so,
that instead of just accepting that their daughter probably died of some random disease, because it's the 1600s and everybody has a random disease, they pointed their fingers at Goody Aries and accused her of witchcraft.
Oh, a completely normal reaction. I do that too when I get sick.
So it gets better. So the Kellys testified that Elizabeth fell ill the night that she returned from Goody's, and they also testified that she spent the night yelling, and I quote, "Father, Father, help me, help me. Goodwife Aries is upon me. She chokes me. She kneels on my belly. She will break my bowels. She pinches me. She will make me black and blue. Goodwife Aries torments me. She pricks me with pins. She will kill me. Oh, Father, set on the great furnace and scald her. Get the broad axe and cut off her head."
Okay.
End quote.
Let me just unpack that real quick. First of all, she's 8.
Right.
Have you met a fucking 8-year-old?
That's literally in my notes. What fucking 8-year-old talks like this?
Yeah. Have you met an 8-year-old? They don't talk like that. I'm just gonna tell you now. It doesn't matter what time period. No.
Have you met an 8-year-old from the 1600s? Like, you're
no.
not gonna be okay. But like, she's not gonna be educated enough to even say half of that.
And not to mention, I don't know about you, I'm sick literally right now, and I can barely do this podcast, let alone be like, oh no, this good wife, she has come for me. She pinches me. She pricks me with pins. She touches my toes. I can't remember the rest
Throw
of
her
it.
in the furnace and
She
grab
breaks
an
my
axe
bowels.
and behead her.
Oh yes, great father. Put her in a furnace. Something along those lines. Yeah, no.
Speaking of Morgan being sick, if you hear any weird noises, it's her heart monitor going off.
Oh yeah, my heart doesn't do the things. Just ignore it.
Yeah.
I also sound out of breath sometimes. That's because my heart doesn't do the things. It's fine.
So her parents, like I said, officially complained a few days after her death. An official investigation into Goody began. During this investigation, and you're gonna hate this,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Goody was summoned to the Kelly house and was told to just stand at the side of Elizabeth's body.
Weird flex, but okay.
They didn't ask her to do anything with it. They literally just asked her to stand there.
Hey, will you stand next to this dead body? I want to see how guilty you look.
So they had her stand there, and according to reports, a red spot appeared on Elizabeth's cheek on the side that Aries was standing on.
So they lied. They just made that all up, or it's like a ladybug or something. Right. Wow, look at that red spot. Oh, it has 6 legs and it's moving. No, it's just a red spot. She must be a witch.
So in their minds, in the minds of the parents and the authorities, this confirmed their suspicions, and an official autopsy was ordered.
Of course.
And I would like to point out that this autopsy, all of the quotations, was the first autopsy conducted in Connecticut.
Oh, I'm sure I would love to read that report. I'm sure there probably wasn't even a report, really.
So the physician, Bray Rosier,
what
love
a name.
it, noted that, and again, this is a quote from the autopsy report, the whole body was pliable without stiffness or contraction.
So, like any body after the first 24 hours?
Much of the skin appeared bruised, the throat contained a large amount of blood, and the gullet, aka esophagus, was contracted like a hard fish bone, end quote.
So, smallpox? Question mark?
A modern day physician looked at the autopsy report, and because of the blood in her throat, it's kind of speculated of like a bronchial pneumonia type deal.
Oh, I could see that. Kind of like the bronchioles are like bursting or something.
Yeah, like bronchitis or pneumonia, something where she'd be coughing up blood.
Or you could even go with like a meningitis type of thing, because that presents really similarly to like pneumonia, but you die within like usually 24 hours, and it's mostly kids who get it.
And meningitis would make sense for that time.
And like it causes a lot of because I've thought I've had meningitis several times. It's ridiculous, honestly. But it stiffens your neck. Like that's one of the main ways they know you have like meningitis is like you can't move your neck, so it would make sense that like her neck was all stiff and weird.
So the modern physician that looked at this autopsy report looked at all of the other details and was like, "You mean decomp? Like
what
you
normal
literally
bodies
just
do?
described decomp.
Like what bodies do right after rigor mortis within the first 24 hours. Yeah, exactly what bodies do.
Yeah, so
have you ever seen one?
Basically, this autopsy can be summarized, and she was in the stage of decomposition that comes after rigor mortis, and she probably had some sort of, bronchitis or pneumonia or meningitis or something. But Rosier, on his autopsy report, that concluded that Elizabeth died of unnatural causes. But he didn't.
So to see this.
But he didn't specifically name Goody as the cause of death. He just said that she died of unnatural causes.
Well, at least he did one thing, right?
Right, but it didn't matter. Residents disregarded that and saw the report as proof of her guilt. So.
Oh, also a side note, too. Back in those days, I mean, also still in these days, but I know for a fact back in those days, when you were training to be a doctor, you would work on cadavers. Like, that happened back then, that happens now. So he knows that a body is pliable after 24 hours, after rigor mortis wears off.
You would think.
He would know that.
It's fine.
He's cut them open. I absolutely guarantee it.
So Goody officially gets charged with witchcraft, and we'll circle back to her because I love the way that she deals with this. But shortly after Elizabeth's death, a girl named Anne Cole kind of set the tone for what would eventually become Salem, and she suddenly became afflicted. She would violently scream and she would shake, and
I hate these bitches. I hate them so much.
And Anne very promptly blamed her bewitchment on her neighbor Rebecca Greensmith, who I love Greensmith so much. Rebecca she's a queen.
Queen Rebecca. I love her already.
So Rebecca is described as a lewd, ignorant, and considerably aged woman.
That was like a half snort. I'm sorry, I don't even know what just happened there, but I hope that when I die, that's how people describe me.
Yeah, it's fine. She was a character. I mean, she's just a lewd, considerably aged woman.
I love it.
I love that descriptor so much. So she gets named, and this is when things just start going downhill.
As they always do.
So Rebecca, the accused, oh gosh, I don't even know where to start with this nonsense. So Anne starts naming a ton of people in town. It's not well recorded who she named.
Get a witchcraft conviction. You get a witchcraft conviction. You get a witchcraft conviction.
She becomes the Oprah of witchcraft convictions. But she starts blaming everybody for her bewitchment, and then the accused start blaming other people.
As one would. I mean, if someone was like, hey, you did this thing and you're gonna die, I'd be like, no.
Yeah. And the accused were usually women, and then they would turn and be like, oh, I'm not the witch, my husband's the witch, and he's just making me do everything.
That's brilliant. That's honestly the best defense I've ever heard, and why did no one use that in Salem? I'm disappointed. Salem, if you're listening to this right now,
Salem,
step your game up.
The husband did it.
Men are trash. I'm kidding, but it was funny. You have to give it to me.
We're gonna get a negative review on iTunes now because
don't negatively review me. No, I'm kidding. It was funny.
It became this really vicious circle of like women would get accused, the women would accuse their husbands, and their husbands would be like, "No, it's the neighbor," and it just became this really vicious circle. So, and even Goody did it. Like Goody accused her husband, and then her husband was like, "No, it was Rebecca Greensmith."
It's not Queen Rebecca. I'm telling you right now, it's not Queen Rebecca.
So Rebecca, this is where she becomes a queen. Instead of being like, no, I'm not a witch, she presents the most damning testimony that came from all of this. And she just admits to having familiarity with the devil.
Oh, me and the devil, we go way back. I mean, you mean Lucifer? You mean Lucy? Oh, that's my boy.
Lucy? So, it gets better. So, Rebecca, admits to having familiarity with the devil and says, and I quote, "At Christmas, that we are going to have a merry meeting to form a covenant." End quote.
Oh, yes. I mean, I generally, my first go-to when people are like, you're a witch, I'm like, oh yeah, I wanted to join a coven.
Yeah, the devil's my best friend, and at Christmas we're just gonna have a merry meeting, and we're gonna form a coven.
You're right. Rebecca is a queen. I love her.
She's a queen. So Rebecca implicates her husband in all of this and says that she and him met in the woods with 7 other witches and includes Goody Aries and 2 other women that are named Mary Sanford and Elizabeth Seeger.
Weird defense, but okay.
Right. So I love that instead of being like, no, I'm not a witch. Like, I'm not a witch. She's like, yeah, I
got my
am.
bro Satan. I got my coven. We're out in the woods. We're dancing naked. I don't know if you said that, but that usually follows
I didn't,
this. Normally that's what follows.
And so after she says this, neighbors start testifying that they've seen this gathering, and they're like, oh yeah, these like women go out into the woods and cook mysterious concoctions in their black kettles.
As witches do.
As witches do.
We all own black kettles. If you didn't know that, it's a fact.
So unfortunately, our queen dies. She and her husband get subjected to the swimming test, which for those who don't know, the swimming test was the dumbest thing to ever happen in history. And it's, from my understanding, they would tie your hands, like your wrists, to your ankles.
Yeah, they would like hog tie you, essentially.
Yeah. And then they would just drop you into a lake. And I think Morbid, which shout out to Morbid True Crime Podcast. I love them. And if they are listening, please.
You are literally our idols. We are exactly the same as you. We love you. Please love us.
So they touch on the Salem witch trials, and they talk about how this swimming, the theory behind this, I'm going to use theory so loosely, but the idea, there we go. The idea behind this swimming test was that water was pure and it was a representation of God. And so if you were a witch, you were associated with the devil. So the idea was that dropping a satanic person into the water, like the water would reject them and they would float.
As one does.
This isn't how science works. So strangely enough, when you just drop a hog-tied person into the water, they're going to fucking sink.
Fun fact, I can't float even when I'm not hog-tied. So I'm innocent as hell, if you didn't know.
I hate it. So a lot of convicted, all of the quotations, witches died because they got dropped into the friggin' water. And then, like, I hate this test so much because, like, even if you take all of the science out of it and just look at it for what it is, like, if you're a witch, you float. If you're not a witch, you sink.
Have you seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail?
Yes. I know exactly where you're going.
Please just search Monty Python and the Holy Grail witch scene on YouTube, and I need you to come back and let's talk about it, because
let's talk about
it literally goes into all of this.
Yeah. But then, like, you just killed somebody. Like, they just...
I mean, they're a witch anyways.
Like,
who cares?
Are the authorities watching somebody sink and just going, oh, shit, they weren't a witch? Well, that sucks. Like,
too late to save them now. You know, couldn't pull them back up. That's a loss.
Oh, my gosh. There was also another... This is why I hate both the Connecticut and Salem witch trials, was that one of the big things was because you were associated with the devil, you weren't... Like, they thought that you couldn't make it through the Lord's Prayer.
Oh, like you couldn't say the whole thing?
Right, because, like, you were associated with Satan and it was going to, like, physically hurt you.
Right, that makes sense.
Why weren't the accused people just
say the Lord's Prayer?
Intense eye contact and just being like, Our Father who art in heaven, blah, 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 blah.
Hallowed be thy name. That's all I know. I'm not going to lie.
I mean, I grew up in a Lutheran church, so I know all of it, but I'm not going to recite it right now. That does not mean I'm a witch. I'm just gonna throw that in.
Maybe it does mean I'm a witch. I don't know it.
So this is another fun thing that I love, is that after the Greensmiths were indicted for being witches, the reasoning for this was, quote, they did not have the fear of God before thine eyes. Thou hast entertained familiarity with Satan, the grand enemy of God and mankind, and by his help hast acted things in a preternatural way. End quote.
So you're best friends with Satan.
Yeah.
And you hate God.
Like that's
you're
your reasoning.
You're a spooky bitch and we don't like it.
Yeah, the lights flickered so much while I was trying to say that, and I hated
they've been flickering a lot. Clearly, the light doesn't feel good about us being spooky bitches.
Yeah. They also have the official court's verdict, which was according to the law of God and the established law of this commonwealth, thou deserves to die.
I want that on my tombstone. You think I'm kidding, but I'm not. That's so intense. I love it.
So Rebecca confessed in open court. Her husband protested and said that he was innocent. They both died. After they died, Anna, who was the bitch running around,
Accusing everybody.
Yeah, accusing everybody and having fits. She reportedly was restored to health.
Oh, how convenient.
Yeah.
Almost like she was never actually sick.
And this is where we circle back to Goody Aries. She fled Hartford. Like,
That's a smart bitch.
okay. But there's a huge but to this. So her and her husband fled Hartford. Nobody knows where they went, but it's speculated that they probably went to New York. They left their 8-year-old son in Hartford.
I love it. I love it so much.
They went, well, we're accused of being witches. Good luck, 8-year-old. Have fun.
They're
They
like, "Oh,
didn't
man."
take their son with them.
I mean, to be fair, if they're fled in the middle of the night or something, which I'm assuming they probably did, it could have been dangerous to take him because, he is 8. Travels like that are hard.
I guess.
I'm not excusing it. They definitely should have taken the child.
So
Maybe they just didn't like him. And they're like, oh man, we've been looking for an excuse to get rid of this this dumb kid. This is perfect. Look at us.
So 7 months after they fled, their estate and their son got picked up by the court system.
Right.
And he was sent to an apprenticeship with a blacksmith, I think.
Yeah, so things worked out.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. I want to know,
and whatever.
I want to know what he did in the 7 months between his parents leaving and the court picking him up, but it's fine. There's no records of that.
Oh, yeah, that's weird. I don't even know because would they have taken his house? I feel like in those days they didn't really have possession. The courts didn't take possession.
It was so ridiculous. So, yeah,
I'd like to think he was just chilling by himself. Just in the house, nothing's wrong. He's just little 8-year-old self, taking care of the house, just cooking himself.
Chilling.
Yeah, he's just chilling. He's having a good time.
Yeah. So, 4 people were executed in Hartford, Connecticut, for witchcraft. 2 of them we know were
Rebecca and her husband.
We don't know who the other 2 were. 11 people in total were tried in Hartford.
Jesus.
And in theory, this was supposed to be where it ended. But then another hysteria broke out in Fairfield, Connecticut.
It never stops, guys. Us witches have to stick together.
But yeah, it was so ridiculous. So 46 people were tried for witchcraft.
Go off, Fairfield.
And 11 of them were executed. These ones are not as well documented as Hartford was, so we don't know.
Get your act together, Fairfield.
Who they were or why this all started.
Right, there's no line of trace.
It was a nightmare. Yeah, so there just 46 people were tried for witchcraft and then 11 were executed.
Yeah, can we stop this whole thing?
No, we can't because then it happens again in Salem. Because like I said, this predicts the Salem witch trials. Predates. Predates.
It predicts. I mean, it kind of predicts. It predicts what kind of behavior they had.
Yeah. So the super shitty thing. So remember with the Salem, this happened semi-recently. The Salem witch trials, the descendants kind of pushed for them to get their names cleared. And so Massachusetts did clear the names.
Right, officially it was these people were not witches. We fucked up. We're really sorry.
We're really sorry. I think that happened
it wasn't that long
early
ago,
2000s, which is super shitty that it took that long.
Only took hundreds of years. It's fine. It's casual.
None of the Connecticut witches got pardoned. To this day, none of them have been pardoned.
This is a formal request to Connecticut. Get your shit together. If Massachusetts can do it, you can do it. You've had time. You've had your time. Come on, guys.
I'm dying. So yeah, that is forgotten witch trials.
They really are forgotten, though. Like, I've
Super
literally never
forgotten.
heard it. I've never heard it. I know
Hearded.
English. English is good.
It's hard.
I've never heard of this before.
Yeah,
Like, all of that was completely new information to me.
Neither had I. I had heard. I'm gonna shout out Morbid again. It's fine. I had heard Morbid's episode on the Salem witch trials, and I was like, I love it, and I love witches, and I want to do an episode on witches, but I don't want to do Salem because I don't.
Boring. It's been covered.
Yeah, it's been
no
covered a
offense,
lot.
Morbid. I get why you covered it, but it's been covered.
Yeah, like it's been covered a lot, and I didn't want to look like we were copying other podcasts, so I
We're not. We promise we're not.
I literally Google searched, were there other witch trials in America? And the first thing that came up was like History Channel was like the Forgotten Witch Trials. And I was like, excuse me, the what now?
You're right. They really were forgotten.
They really were forgotten. I did
Yeah,
not
because we
know.
even learned about like the Salem witch trials in like history class. Like we read
Yeah.
the Crucible as well in like English class, which terrible book. Arthur Miller.
We did the Crucible as a play in high school, which is a really intense play to do as a high schooler. 0 out of 10 would not recommend it.
Yeah, that's really weird.
It was super intense.
Especially because I remember like at least like multiple people have sex in that play. I remember, right? That's weird.
I mean, if I remember correctly, I think it was only upperclassmen that were in it. So it was like juniors and seniors.
So petition for no high schoolers to ever do the Crucible. Thank you. Also, don't make us read it. It's bad.
Yeah, I don't.
It's bad.
Yeah, isn't that? But yeah, you learn about the Salem witch trials in school, and like some schools make you read the Crucible, and if you're from Fenton High School, you do the Crucible as a play. Sorry, Fenton, for calling you out, but like
you had to be exposed.
you had to be exposed. But like, yeah, there's so much coverage on the Salem witch trials, and there was that whole show about Salem, and there's been multiple movies about Salem witch trials.
And no one cares about Connecticut.
Nobody talks about Connecticut and how the death of an 8-year-old just sparked this whole hysteria.
So the moral of the story is witches are not bad. And if you're 8 and you die, it wasn't witches, probably.
Moral of the story, if your child randomly dies of some horrible ailment, please don't point to your neighbor and accuse them of witchcraft.
All your witch friends want to do is grow succulents and do petty things to encourage positivity in their life, I promise you.
I promise you, all your witch friends are just banging on a pot, walking around their house, telling a ghost to get the fuck out.
Yeah, they don't care about killing your 8-year-old child. I formally promise you this. On behalf of all witches, this is not what they're doing. And also, they're not, even if they were, which they're not going to come in an ethereal form and poke her with pins.
I love that that's like such a common thread.
It's always a common
Connecticut
thread.
and Salem is that like
Getting pricked with pins.
Yeah, the pricked with pins and like the ethereal form of like the witch showed up in my house in the
And
middle
then she was pricking me with. I think the pricking with pins though was like in my guess, my
I'm sure
formal
there's
guess.
some historical significance.
I think it was
to
just something too that they had easy access to because women were so like they sewed all
you
the
were sewing
time.
everything.
And so like if you were trying to pretend to be possessed by witches and you were saying you were pricked by pins, like you could easily access pins and like prick yourself.
Yeah.
Or have your friends prick you and be like, oh, look at these prick marks.
Only afflicted
Witches.
never. I mean, somebody please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but the afflicted never had pin pricks on them.
They
It was
didn't in
just something
Salem
where they
either.
were like, "Oh yeah, this is something that happened to me."
Yeah, they're like, oh, she's torturing me. She's appearing here and making me say things.
Yeah.
No, you're just shitty and 13. Stop it.
Yeah. Also, can we talk about that? How these towns were just taking the word of
Like literal children.
literal fetuses as like the word of God.
Yeah, they're like,
Literally.
oh man, you're 12? Believable.
You're a child and you're calling somebody a witch? Yeah, that makes sense, and not just that you're a freaking hysterical child with nothing better to do.
Yeah, it's never made any sense to me.
Yeah. Well, and even if you look at the Salem witch trials, like there was a 4 or 5-year-old that was accused of witchcraft, and she like had severe psychological damage because they threw her in a prison for a couple of days.
Right, like,
Prison is not
she's 5.
putting into detail how horrible. Like it was a dungeon.
Oh yeah,
Like,
they literally would throw them like in cells with like
dungeon.
no windows and like no food or water or like benches or anything. It's just like,
Yeah.
hey, go sit on this disgusting floor with these rats. Mm-hmm. We'll feed you gruel once a day.
Chained to a wall.
Chained to a wall. Yeah.
Like, of course, a 5-year-old had severe psychological damage from that.
Anyone would.
I would have severe psychological damage.
I have severe psychological damage just thinking about being in that situation.
Yikes. I thought I had to hiccup. I did not. Okay, we're good.
We did not hiccup. Update.
Yeah, I don't know. I love and I hate the witch trials, and I feel like we should go deeper one day. Like, you should look into the psychology of everything.
Yeah, well, we can do a little mini episode,
A little bitch bite,
if you will, about the psychology of like mass hysteria and how things like this happen. I've read a little bit into it. It's pretty fascinating. But like she said, like I was not prepared for this episode.
Yeah, she was not involved.
Don't come for me. But if you want me to do a bitch bite about the psychology behind all of this, like, feel free to leave us a comment. Let us know. Well, that conveniently got brought up. If you enjoyed this episode, you should follow us on Instagram at Bitches and Murders Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at And Murders Podcast because...
No, just And Murders.
Oh, just And Murders.
Yeah.
It's okay. Twitter hates swear words.
It really does.
Don't come for us.
If you look at our handle for Facebook too, which is B&M Podcast, it was because when I was trying, like, the page itself is listed under Bitches and Murders, but if you try to add us on Facebook, like if you try to like tag us on something,
you have to do
it has to be B&M Podcast, because when I was trying to make it, I had it as Bitches and Murders, and it was like,
swear words are bad.
This has profanity in it, and then I was like B and Murders, and it was like, this has a word that we don't allow. I'm like, fine,
B&M. And then you can follow us on Patreon, which I believe is also Bitches and Murders,
yes,
right?
It is.
And then
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I think we covered everything. Oh, you can also email us if you have any questions or
cases or evidence.
Yeah, if you would like us to like cover anything specific, our email is beandmurderspodcast@gmail.com.
So yeah, suggest cases. We would love to have new ideas. Like, we have quite a few of our own. We have probably I think together 10 episodes planned, but obviously we would love to have more. If you have any comments or evidence or different theories on what we've talked about, this one's not so much on theories, but if you have any other extra details, we'd love to hear it. We can also always throw it in a future episode. Also, if you donate to our Patreon, we will be sure to shout you out. Each tier you will get, it'll explain on the Patreon as well. But with each tier and each episode, you will get something special. That might be drawings, notes, scientific articles,
anything,
new dance moves. I don't know yet. I don't have all of them planned out, but we'll figure it out, and you'll get something for your money, I promise.
Link for a live Q&A.
Oh yeah, live Q&A. Also support us. Help us buy microphones.
Morgan's gorgeous drawing from the last episode.
Oh, I'm telling you guys, if you're gonna pay for any episode, Patreon, do the last episode, because
Bordens.
You will not be able to handle that beautiful drawing that I did.
Yeah.
You won't be able to handle it, I promise.
So that was our little bitch bite on the Forgotten Witch Trials. So
this is Morgan, and
this is Sierra, and don't forget to stay spooky, bitches.
Stay spooky.
Oh,
I know, I was getting I need to clear my throat. I was like...